Hi, and welcome. My name is Lynn Bernstein, and I'm the founder of Transparent Elections North Carolina. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit group of volunteers, and our mission is to confirm that every eligible vote is counted as the voter intended by working with elections officials to ensure that elections are secure, transparent, robustly audited, and publicly verified. We really like the premise of evidence-based elections. The principle of evidence-based elections is that local election officials should not only find the true winners of an election, but should also provide to the electorate convincing evidence that they did. And that comes from a paper that Andrew Appel and Phil Stark wrote many years ago. I believe it's in the Georgetown Law Review, is one of the places it was published. And it just has great best practices for allowing the public to verify elections and just talking about the importance of that. A little bit of background about myself. I have a degree in aerospace engineering, and I worked on testing and integrating satellites for many years. Back in 2019, after looking into North Carolina elections, I decided to start Transparent Elections, mostly because of the lack of transparency in our elections. I'm also trained to work as an international election observer, although I'm really focused here in North Carolina before I go overseas and start looking at other people's elections. My core belief is really that a successful election has to be one where the public trusts the results, not because somebody says we should, but because the election is worthy of trust. So what does a trustworthy election look like? Well, it's secure, it's transparent, it's robustly audited and publicly verified. And that public verification is what we're going to be talking about today. Imaging poll tapes and comparing those and analyzing those is one way to verify part of the election process. I do have a real passion to educate and empower members of the public to engage in nonpartisan observation and public verification. And I try to give people tips on how to do that legally and safely and respectfully. Okay, so today what we're going to be learning about is this is training for imaging and analyzing poll tapes from the 2022 general election. We're going to talk about what are poll tapes, why is it important to record them, why are we using the actual vote app, what part of the election system, voting system prints those tapes, where to go to get those tapes, and some county specific information on how to find information about your county and about what tabulators your county uses. And then also the ins and outs of how to actually record using this actual vote app. And then what do you do after you go and image those tapes? So we're going to be covering all that today. The reason why it's important to image these 2022 tapes, even though the election's already been certified, is sort of twofold. Number one, we can take steps between now and the next election to mitigate any issues and gain a greater understanding of how to improve our elections. And number two, this is going to get volunteers and groups trained, experienced, and ready for this 10-day window that happens between an election and certification, which is the only time that you can really challenge an election or bring up issues that happen in the election and have those resolved. So ideally for 2023 and 2024, we're going to have many people all across the state and many counties imaging and analyzing these tapes within that 10-day window. And so we will be ready and get people ready for those elections. Okay. So let's talk about what is a poll tape. I'm going to turn my video off here. So what is a poll tape? So in North Carolina, we count our votes using electronic tabulators. Those are sometimes called scanners. A poll tape essentially gets printed by that tabulator. It looks like a long cash register receipt. When you boot up the machine in the morning, when the elections officials boot up those machines in the morning, those tabulators, it will print out a zero portion of the tape. And that's really just to ensure that there's been no electronic ballot stuffing going on. That zero tape should be signed by the chief judge and the other two judges, and it should not be torn off of the machine. It should be sort of rolled back up and tucked in this little compartment. The results portion of the tape is printed after the elections officials select tabulate on that machine. And then the rest of that tape will print out. And that has a lot of useful information on it. It has the vote totals for each contest. It has the number of undervotes and overvotes, the serial numbers of the machines. It talks about it. It'll show the modem status. And of course, in North Carolina, the tape should indicate that no modem was found. It should show whether or not your county has saved ballot images. It should indicate save all or yes for ballot images. What we've been finding in most counties is that it says W, which means that they're only saving the write-in ballot images and not all ballot images. It'll have the public count and protected count, which is a way that we can know that the number of voters who entered that precinct and voted equals the number of ballots that were placed in the tabulator. And then it will show also the date and time the polls closed and some other configuration information. So why is it important to look at these tapes and analyze them? One of the big reasons, like I said, was that sometimes there are discrepancies on those tapes. What ends up happening is that in North Carolina, we have our election workers, our chief judges, will remove a removable media USB stick from the tabulator, and they will drive that to the County Board of Elections office. And then that County Board of Elections office will put that USB that has the electronic vote totals into their election management system, where then they upload those totals to the state. Well, on that machine at the precinct, before that USB gets sent to the county, that poll tape prints out. And so we can actually compare the poll tape that was printed out, really just that receipt, to what the state ultimately reports. And we want to make sure that those match. Sometimes things can go wrong, and sometimes things happen, and so those might not match. You can click here for this video of why we record poll tapes. I'm not going to play this video right now. It will be in the slide deck. But Susan Pinchon, she is the founder of Florida Fair Elections Coalition. And this is just a 2-minute clip from Hacking Democracy. It's a documentary from 2006. It's an older documentary, but the type of technology is the same, and it has the same types of vulnerabilities. Essentially, Susan and some other citizens went and gathered these poll tapes, and then they compared them, and what they found was that those numbers didn't match. And they went ahead and went to their elections department, and this was before the election was certified, and they were able to make sure that the correct totals were the ones that were recorded. And so this is really one of the big reasons why it's important to collect these poll tapes. So how do we image these poll tapes? We can't actually take the physical poll tape. Most counties will charge you to scan these tapes. And ideally, we want to image these tapes ourselves for many reasons. Number one, we want to make sure that the tapes that we're imaging and video recording, that they're the original signed poll tapes. We also want to video record the poll tapes rather than take small, pictures of this tape all the way down. These tapes sometimes can be up to 30 feet long. And so one of the reasons why we're doing this is that this company, the company America Counts, was founded by Dan Wolf, who is an attorney and political scientist. And he really wanted to make sure that these poll tapes were admissible in court. And the best way to have these tapes to be admissible in court is to have a video recording of it through this app, because the app will actually timestamp when the video is taken. It will show where the video was taken. And it's much more admissible because it's very difficult to alter a video, whereas a photo, people could call that into question. So America Counts is a nonpartisan nonprofit group, and their website is listed at above the slide so that you can go to that. In order to help with this project, you're going to need to download the Actual Vote app. There's a version on the Apple Store and also for Android. Actual Vote, which is made by America Counts, they will help train us to transcribe and analyze these poll tapes once we upload them. So this will actually take us from the starting line to the finish line. And this is such a great nonprofit that's doing this work. And then one of the great things about this app is that it's a way to crowdsource the collection of all these poll tapes, and there are a lot of them. And so when you have people from different groups and different campaigns, different political parties, and they're all taking images of these tapes and submitting them to the same secure database, those become publicly available for everyone. So really we're crowdsourcing all across, they're crowdsourcing all across the country, and we're making sure to crowdsource all across North Carolina. And you can see the videos that have already been uploaded over the last few years at av.democracycounts.org. All right, so this website here is Verified Voting. They maintain a pretty up-to-date website about voting systems throughout every jurisdiction in the country. They also have a lot of information about electronic voting systems in general. And you can go to verifiedvoting.org/verifier. And I'm just gonna go up here and kind of show you the different things that this has. So you can look at election equipment from 2006 all the way to essentially let's look at 2022. And we're gonna click on North Carolina here. We're gonna go to Wake County because that is where my home county is. And it gives you all sorts of information about registered voters. The important part here is what type of equipment they use. So they have equipment they use for election day, for early voting, and also for mail-in absentee. And the thing that we're really focused on here are the scanners or tabulators. So at election day precincts, what is used is this DS200. And this, I'm sure most people who voted in North Carolina have seen this. The tape will print out from this corner of the machine. So a person will insert their ballot. The machine takes an image of that ballot. Votes are then allocated on a cast vote record, and then it goes to a cast vote record database. And then the totals here will print out, the zero tape prints here, and the totals will print here at the end of the day. And then there's a USB drive in the back of the machine that will be carried to the Board of Elections to upload that to the state. For early voting, the same thing. They have multiple DS200s at each early voting site. And then for mail-in and absentee equipment, most of the larger counties, and actually some of the smaller counties, use a DS850 or a DS450. And it's a larger machine. It works very similar to the DS200. The main difference is that these machines don't print a poll tape. They print a poll report, which is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper rather than a long cash register receipt. And it's important to go ahead and image those with that same app as well. Let's talk a little bit about there are many different opportunities during an election cycle to image both the zero portion of the tapes at the beginning of the day or the beginning of the scanning of absentee ballots, and then also at the end of the election day, or at the end of the day at the Board of Elections. So both at the Board of Elections and at precincts. And so there are essentially three categories of tapes. There are the tapes from the early voting locations, from the county board offices for the absentee by mail, and then the tabulators that are at the precincts on election day. So for our training, we're only going to be talking about how to image all of these tapes at the County Board of Elections office, because this is where all the poll tapes are securely stored after every election. And they're stored there for at least 22 months following certification of election, and that is a federal law that applies to all states. So I'm not going to go over this chart because that will be in a different training as we get closer to the next election. So a poll tape versus a poll report. So you can see here this DS200s at the bottom, and then the DS850. This is just that 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And so the DS850s will print a 0 report, and then they'll also print another report at the end of the voting that will show all the totals. But what you should see here is essentially all zeros on that 0 report. And this looks like this one's from Johnston County. This one you can see here, this is a 0 report. You can see polls open. You can see a lot of that information. You can see zeros here. That means that nothing's been scanned yet. All right, next. So what will you need when you go to the Board of Elections office? So essentially what you'll need is 10 to 14 volunteers to all coordinate and go at the same time. It'll take about 6 hours if you're working in parallel. That is, you're scanning multiple tapes at one time. So once you have enough committed volunteers who are willing to go and willing to be trained, you should have somebody in your group, your county lead or somebody, maybe, it's a group of your neighbors who are going, and you need to coordinate with the county election director or with somebody at the Board of Elections. You want to talk to them about potential dates, the location, how many tables they could have available for you to use, and any restrictions on handling the tapes. You want to create and print a spreadsheet so that somebody in your group can check off and make sure that you've taken a video recording through the app that's been successfully uploaded. And you want to make sure that you've gotten all the precincts and all the absentee tabulators and all the early voting site tabulators. Most counties have 1 to 3 absentee tabulators, those larger DS850s or DS450s. And then early voting sites, sometimes there is more than one tabulator. And periodically there may be more than one tabulator in a precinct if a scanner, if a tabulator broke halfway through the day and they had to, bring in another tabulator. You're also going to need stands for imaging the tapes. You're going to need 1 stand per table, and they're pretty inexpensive and easy to make. And I'm going to go through that next. You're going to want to bring a roll of clear archival tape in case any part of the tape is accidentally ripped. They are very fragile and you'll have to be really careful with them, but you want to talk to the election director first and ask them, hey, if we accidentally rip a tape, what would you like us to do? The last time that I was in imaging tapes, I had worked out with the election director from Wake County, and he told us to just tape it. That would be fine. You also want to wear gloves for anyone if you're handling the tapes. I usually like to bring a large and medium. That usually fits most people. You want to bring some paper clips and rubber bands because that's how they sort of bundle these tapes up. And then sometimes those rubber bands rip or break, or the paper clips, they don't always clip on the same way when you roll them up as somebody else, and you might need some larger paper clips. And then also I like to bring 1 to 2 staple removers because sometimes they will staple part of that poll tape, and you'll need to remove the staple without ripping the tape. And then somebody should have a clipboard and a pen and that spreadsheet printed out so that they can go around each table and check off when each of those tapes have been imaged. You'll need 1 to 2 cell phones per table that has the actual vote app installed. And the really important thing is to make sure that you've practiced with your app, just using a cash register receipt from the grocery store or somewhere, to make sure that your app is working and that you're able to use it. And the last thing is that I really highly recommend that when you first get there, that you set up a cell phone or some sort of video recorder in the corner of the room to capture the entire room and the whole process in case anything comes into question. That's unfortunately just the world we live in now, and you will need to, I would just highly recommend that you do that. All right. So the stands. So how do you make a stand? I'm going to go ahead and put my video back on here, and I'm going to move this up so that you can see my video. I think it's frozen though. All right, so let's talk about stands here for a second. I'm gonna put this here so you can see. This is a stand my husband made. It's pretty rough, but essentially it has several components that you'll need for a stand. You'll need a sort of a pass-through where you can take your pull tape and run it underneath this stand while your camera and app are on this stand. So it needs to have a hole in the top for your camera to be placed in. So let me turn this around this way. So your camera is going to go on the top here with your phone's going to go on the top here with your camera pointing down this way. And then you're going to need a way to slide this pull tape underneath the camera view. So here is an example of one stand right here. It's just some wire and wood. Another example of a stand is a used container, and it could be any plastic container. I've seen people go to the dollar store and get containers, just a plain container. This one has, the hole here for your phone and a little tunnel here for that pull tape to go through. And I'm going to go ahead and paint this before I take it to the Board of Elections. But it is nice to reuse things. So, and then another one that you could use is this example here that somebody helped us with. And they just use some white foam board from the dollar store. So you can get a sheet of this foam board, and it's inexpensive, and you just need a hot glue gun. And so they give the dimensions here. You definitely want a pretty wide tunnel here for your pull tape. You don't want it to get stuck or snagged in any way. And I mean, that's really the basics of what you need. You can get more details of that at transparentelections.org/pull-tape-project.nc. So let's see. So once you have all that, then you're ready to actually show up at the Board of Elections with your team. So let's go to best practices here. So let's talk about best practices for inspecting public records. So this is something a little different that is different than just going and asking somebody for a document, having them hand it to you and then leave or sign for it. You're actually going to be at the Board of Elections office for several hours. And so really the biggest thing is to always be civil. Always be civil. Even if elections officials are put off by you being there, do not lose civility, even if somebody is hostile to you. When handling public records, you always need to ask the custodian of record for permission and not forgiveness. For example, the Wake election director and I established a method for handling these poll tapes a couple years ago, and taping them to the wall, he wasn't going to allow that. But he said it would be okay for us to put them on a table and scan them. And so that's kind of where we come up with that method. And then you want to be really specific with the custodian of record. So you want to ask them, hey, if we accidentally rip a poll tape, what would you like us to do? When in doubt, just always ask. Do not assume anything. It's always better to get permission because these are critical election records, and it's a privilege for us to be able to, for them to let us handle those and not just have them give us a copy of it, which isn't going to be as good for us as if we do it ourselves. Always use gloves when handling election records, and make sure that you put everything back where you found it in the order that you found it in. So they might have these, I've seen some counties that have them in bins, some of them in plastic bags, but they're usually grouped a certain way. And so it's important to put those groups of tapes back in the same place that you found them. And always use a buddy system. So hopefully you're going with big group, but if it's just, if you need to just go by yourself, I would encourage that you bring somebody else with you, a neighbor, a friend, just because if anything comes into question, there'll be somebody who can vouch for you. All right. And then this last part is kind of the most critical part. And so I'm going to make my screen a little bit bigger here so you can see, because so the first thing you're going to do when you get these tapes that they give you is you're going to make sure that they're giving you the original signed poll tapes. So if they're giving you tapes that aren't signed, that look, like just copies, you want to ask for the original signed tapes. They should all be there, and those should not have been destroyed because it hasn't been 22 months yet. You're going to want to rearrange the tables available to kind of spread out, because it does take up a little bit of room. You don't want to be bumping into each other. You're going to want 2 people per table to video record the tapes. And then also one person can be rolling those back up, or accordion folding them, or however they had them. You want to put them back how you had them. So one person will be using the stand and their app on the phone, and they'll be, using these, imaging these poll tapes. And then the other person will roll up the tape, rubber band it or paper clip it, however they had it, maybe raise their hand. The person with the clipboard who's actually keeping track of which poll tapes have been imaged, you tell them what poll tape you just imaged, and you can see on your phone that it's been uploaded successfully. And so you just want to make sure it can be chaotic, but if it's really organized, it goes pretty smoothly. And then you want to designate one person to make sure that all the tapes go back into the proper containers. So they should really take a good look at how they have things stored and make sure that they're putting them back almost, as close to how they found it as possible. So when you use your Actual Vote app, when you open that Actual Vote app up, I'm gonna, let's see here. Yeah. Okay. You have your Actual Vote app here, and it'll say suggested next steps. Pick your Actual Vote home base. And I'm going to say sure. And I've already entered in North Carolina, but when you go and you tap here, it's going to do a pull down menu for state, and then it will also do a pull down menu for your county. So I'm in Wake County, so I'm going to enter in Wake County, and I'm going to hit OK. And I've already logged in. You do have to be logged in to use this, because we need to make sure that we know who's imaging the tape, where they're imaging it, and this app does all that, but it requires you to be logged in. So the next thing we're going to hit on this is we're going to just say record, and I don't know if you can see, it says precinct number there. So I'm going to enter my precinct number in, just because I know that precinct number, and hit OK. And then the screen is going to look like, well, you can see it's just it's going to look like a video, and there's going to be a button here to start recording. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my stand here. Actually, I'll use this other stand because I think it'll be easier to see. And I'm going to put my phone with the camera facing down here. And so when I'm looking at the top of my screen, I want to make sure that my camera is not being obstructed by the stand itself. So in my camera view, you can't see it on here, I can see underneath here. So then I'm going to get my poll tape, or my cash register receipt here, and I'm going to just set it right here so that I can see the top edge of the tape in my window here on my phone. Okay. I'm going to hit the record button on my phone up here. So I'm going to go up here and hit record. And then there's a bit of a technique, and I'm going to just call it the 1-2 slide technique. And so what you will do is, you can see sometimes these tapes, because they're, they get folded and rolled up, that they can start bubbling up. You do want to make sure that you pull it flat so that it's not getting a lot of shadows in there. So at the beginning, you'll hit record, and then you'll say, you'll pause it for 2 seconds. So you'll go 1, 2, slide, 1, 2, slide, 1, 2, slide, 1, 2, slide. Okay, so that's what it's gonna look like. The reason for pausing and sliding, if you go, after you're done with this training, if you go to the av.democracycounts.org, you can look at different videos. And actually, we could do that now. Why don't we do that real quick? So here's this av.democracycounts.org. I'm going to go here and just, this is for all of every state that's entered in. I'm just going to go in here and change this to North Carolina. And it's going to bring up all the North Carolina tapes that were taken. So you can see in 2021 in January, we were imaging the tapes from the 2020 election. So I'm just going to click on, I'll just click on this tape. And so this is somebody's video that they took. And so what ends up happening is that after these videos get uploaded to that secure server, all these numbers on your poll tape are going to need to be transcribed and put into a spreadsheet. And I believe that Democracy Counts, America Counts, they are working on automating that, but even the automation is not going to work with a blurry image. And anytime you're moving this, it does make sense. Like you'd think, oh, I'll just slowly scan it like this. Well, what ends up happening is that then the whole thing is blurry. And so what the person on the other end is going to need to do is to pause and stop this video so that they can, essentially see the totals on it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this back down here and get that out of the way. So I'm going to play and pause this video so you can kind of see what this looks like. So they're going a little fast, but they stop long enough to pause. I'm pausing this. And they can sort of move it quickly and pause, because anytime it's moving, it's going to be blurry. So really you want to do that, that 1-2 slide technique that I was talking about. So I'm going to show that 1-2 slide technique one more time. So again, you would enter in your precinct number, hit OK. You get your tape all ready and lined up to go. You go ahead and hit the record button, and then you're going to just move this through. So okay. One of the other important things that you should know is you do not want to delete your video that you've taken of your poll tape until you've gone to that av.democracycounts.org site before you delete that poll tape. You really want to make sure that it's there before you delete it. So, they usually have those once you upload them. The people at Actual Vote, they will look through those, and generally within a day or two, they're up online. Because I've already given them a heads up about people going to Wake County in a couple of days, it'll probably be uploaded that same day because they'll be waiting for that. And so if there are any counties, any people who want to organize this effort in their county, I am more than happy to do an individual training with you, meet with your team, answer any questions. If you're close to Wake County, I might even come and help image these tapes with you. But you can always contact me at transparentelectionsnc@gmail.com, or you can text me at 910-764-8328. If you have any questions about the training, please email or call me. And yeah, thanks and good luck. I hope we see your tapes online soon. And thank you so much.